She mean to me now.
I feared no man when I traveled with Otis Redding because I knew that Otis Redding was one of the best fist slingers there was around. If you ever saw him in action, you would wonder why he didn't pursue a fighting career, because he was very, very fit.
Otis Redding wasn't just a singer, he was soul personified. From small-town Georgia to international stardom, his voice and passion left a mark that still resonates. But his rise wasn't easy, and just as he was reaching his peak, a tragic plane crash ended it all. Even so, his music lives on, proving that legends never truly fade. Let's dive into the story of the man behind the hits.
I looked at Otis as an older brother. I always assumed he was older than me because he had so much more streetwise, and plus he was a big man. You know, he was 6'4". I was 6'7". He kind of towered over me.
Otis Redding, the soulful legend himself, came into the world in 1941 in Dawson, Georgia. Life wasn't exactly cushy for him growing up. His dad, Otis Redding Sr., juggled jobs as a sharecropper and a preacher, but neither brought in much cash. With 5 siblings and a mom holding down the fort, young Otis had to figure out his own path to break out of those tough beginnings. From the jump, Otis Redding was all about that grind and love for music. He started belting tunes in the Vineville Baptist Church choir and jumped at any chance to perform. He even ditched school to help his family by chasing his music dreams. And guess what? It paid off big time. Otis crushed a local talent contest for 15 weeks straight. Yes, 15, which landed him a spot in the talent shows at the Douglas Theater in Macon, Georgia. Otis Redding's moment finally came when he linked up with Johnny Jenkins and the Pine Toppers. His raw, soulful voice and crazy good emotion got Stax Records to notice him. That led to his first big hit, These Arms of Mine, back in 1962. From there, it was hit after hit. Think bangers like Sittin' On, The Dock of the Bay, Try a Little Tenderness, and Respect. Total legend status unlocked.
Try just a little bit of tenderness.
In the mid-50s, Otis Redding's world flipped when his dad got really sick with tuberculosis. Suddenly, teenage Otis had to step up big time. Even though he was the 4th kid in line, as the oldest boy, he felt like it was on him to help hold things together. With his dad in and out of the hospital, money was tight. Otis knew he had to step in, so he made a tough call. He quit high school to start working full-time. From picking cotton to pumping gas, he hustled hard to keep his family afloat.
He was an overcomer. He did not allow anything to stop him. He did not allow anything to throw him off from.
At just 15, Otis made a bold call. He dropped out of school to help keep his family afloat. He took on all kinds of jobs, even the back-breaking gig of digging wells. A huge part of what fueled his passion? Little Richard. Otis was obsessed with his high-energy performances and flashy style. While some folks side-eyed Little Richard's music and persona for being too bold back then, Otis soaked it all up, finding inspiration in his fearless and soulful sound.
I can't stop now.
Otis's journey to stardom kicked off during a time when segregation was still a harsh reality in America. His talent was off the charts, but he couldn't just perform anywhere. Instead, he hit the Chitlin Circuit, a network of venues that welcomed black artists and audiences. It wasn't easy, but it was a space where up-and-coming musicians like Otis could hone their craft and connect with a tight-knit community.
And in doing so, that developed the voice that has become my own. Like all great singers, you always think they're singing for you. And
his big moment came while touring with Johnny Jenkins and the Pine Toppers. In 1962, they hit up Stax Records in Memphis to lay down some tracks. Jenkins wrapped up early, so Otis jumped at the chance to record 2 songs. One of them, These Arms of Mine. It blew up and officially put him on the map. We'll come back to what a storied career he had, but before that, let's talk about the plane crash.
So the water, and I saw those girls at the plane. I don't want to get to him.
Otis and his crew thought they were in for a smooth flight, just another leg of the journey. They boarded the plane, totally wiped out and crashed, as in fell asleep, almost instantly. But then, Out of nowhere, things took a scary turn. The plane ran into trouble, and before they knew it, they were plunging into the water. They were headed to Madison, Wisconsin, when things went south fast. The weather was brutal, rain pouring down, fog so thick you could barely see, and it made the flight super sketchy. As they neared the airport, disaster struck. The plane crashed into the freezing waters of Lake Monona, just a few miles from the runway. Out of everyone on board, only one person made it out alive: Ben Cawley, the trumpet player for the Barkays, Otis's band. He was knocked unconscious when the plane hit the water, but somehow managed to wake up, escape the wreck, and grab onto a seat cushion to keep himself afloat until help arrived. Losing his bandmates and close friends was heartbreaking, and Ben had to live with the weight of survivor's guilt for years after. Ben vividly recalled the chaos that followed. Disoriented and struggling, he saw one of the women from the plane nearby, desperately trying to stay afloat. With no choice but to act, Ben began swimming toward what he hoped was safety. The cold water and the panic around them made every moment a fight for survival. Amid all the chaos, Ben tried to grab onto someone nearby, but their hands slipped and they drifted away. Exhaustion was hitting him hard, and for a moment, he thought this was it. He couldn't fight it anymore and sank under the water. Just when it seemed like the end, out of nowhere, someone yanked him back up, a total lifesaver. Literally. Eventually, Ben and the others were pulled from the water and hauled onto a boat. By the time they got to safety, Ben was so out of it he couldn't even talk. At the hospital, he barely remembered what happened, and he couldn't communicate properly. It was a crazy, traumatic experience that stuck with him for a long time. Even after almost losing his life, Ben made his way back to Memphis a few days later. The whole thing left him rattled, but he wasn't about to let it stop him. After Otis passed away, it was like finding a secret stash of unreleased tracks. His record label jumped at the chance to drop posthumous albums, which had fans going wild for more of his soul-filled magic. Albums like The Dock of the Bay and Love Man kept his legacy rocking, proving just how talented he truly was. But here's the twist. While fans were celebrating these fresh releases, the people closest to Otis were hit with a harsh reality. Turns out, the money side of things wasn't handled well. Poor record-keeping and shady management meant that Otis's family and team were struggling to get the royalties they deserved from all those new albums. Talk about a mess. The folks over at Stax Records, who helped Otis Redding blow up in the first place, got hit with a major shock when they tried to sort out the rights to his music after his death. Turns out they didn't actually own his catalog, something they really should have known. That bombshell left them totally out of control of his music, and they never got those rights back. Talk about a huge mess. This whole mess also peeled back the curtain on some pretty shady stuff in the music biz, especially when it comes to who really owns an artist's work. And it didn't stop there. Turns out Stax Records had some pretty questionable business moves and contracts, which led to all kinds of legal and financial drama. Just a total disaster all around. Things got even messier at the label itself, with both the execs and the artists dealing with the fallout from losing such a massive catalog. This whole situation really added to the bigger story of how so many black artists had to fight to own their work and actually get paid for it. It was just another reminder of how hard it was for them to secure what was rightfully theirs. After Otis's tragic passing, his legacy only grew, with fans keeping his name alive through tributes and stories. But, like with most celebs, not every story was all sunshine and rainbows. For his wife, Zelma, and their 4 kids, some of the stuff that came out was hard to deal with.
His soul-stirring, hip-shaking, chart-topping music still is powerful today because of the work of one person, his widow, Zelma Redding.
Some of the stories painted a totally different picture of Otis, one that didn't exactly match the sweet, soulful legend fans adored. There were whispers about personal flaws and even some shady behavior that totally clashed with the public image of the man they knew. That is the curse of celebrity. Otis really did well for himself. Otis started out on the Chitlin circuit, performing in venues that supported black artists during segregation. After Johnny Jenkins left the band, Redding met Phil Walden and later signed with Confederate Records. His first hit, These Arms of Mine, was released after a memorable session where he impressed Stax's Jim Stewart. The song became a major success, and Otis's career took off from there. Redding's debut album, Pain in My Heart, featured his first big hits. He performed at the Apollo Theater, where financial struggles hit hard, but he was supported by fellow artists like Benny King. His second album, the great Otis Redding Sings Soul Ballads, included hits like Mr. Pitiful, which led to his nickname. Otis also co-wrote I've Been Loving You Too Long, and his 1965 album, Otis Blue, featured iconic tracks like Respect and A Change Is Gonna Come, cementing his place in soul history.
I know, change has gotta come.
Redding's success led to the purchase of a 300-acre ranch in Georgia and the founding of 2 production companies. He became one of the first soul artists to perform for rock audiences, receiving critical acclaim for his shows, including one at Whiskey A Go-Go, and even attracting Bob Dylan. Redding's 1966 recording of Try a Little Tenderness became one of his signature songs. He also performed in London and at the Fillmore Auditorium, where he gained recognition from mainstream audiences. His European tour included the release of Otis Redding, Live in Europe. In 1967, he released a duet album with Carla Thomas, King and Queen, which became a gold record. Redding's performance at the Monterey Pop Festival was a pivotal moment in his career, expanding his audience to mainstream America. His powerful performance, including a rendition of Respect and Satisfaction, earned him significant recognition. During this time, Redding and Arthur Conley worked together on Sweet Soul Music, a hit that boosted Redding's career further. However, he began struggling with vocal health issues, leading to surgery later that year.